Morning, Phil. So today we're going to talk about what the NAR settlement's going to do to realtors, how it's going to help sellers, and how it may or may not impact buyers. In the video, we're going to discuss about the likely scenario that we see developing in the future and why. But Phil, the thing you brought up with me on the phone before we discussed, and Phil and I work together at McConnin Company Realty. He's doing flat fees for sellers because for lots of reasons. But Phil, what did you see as the massive risk in the scenario in which buyers are following what NAR does and they work out a buyer contract with the buyers and then they submit offers on behalf of buyers? What do you see the massive risk to them is?
So there's few scenarios, but one is going to be when a buyer's agent, the MLS is no longer going to have a field to offer buyer agent compensation. So the agents are going to, sign an agreement with the buyer that they'll pay them, but they also may choose to ask the seller to pay compensation. The seller can still pay compensation. They just can't advertise it via the MLS.
According to NAR,
right? In the proposed settlement. So none of this is final yet, but in the event that the offer goes in, I'm an agent, I'm representing a buyer. We put in an offer and we say, hey, John, here we want to offer $1 million on this property, and we'd like you to pay Phil a $10,000 commission. And you present that to your clients, and your clients say, you know what, John, we love this. We wanted $1 million. We told you that's what we wanted. But listen, I read an article, and there's no way I'm paying that agent. I don't have to pay him. I'm paying you, John. So counter that deal and pay no commission.
So let me just emphasize that. So list is 1-1 in our scenario. Offer comes in $1 million. Seller's very satisfied with the $1 million, but instead of paying $10,000 commission on the buyer agent, he wants it countered out to $2,000, $1,000, or even $0. You see this as a scenario, and then what is the risk why is this such a risk for the buyer's agent?
Well, as an agent, we're not supposed to, as a licensee with California and in Arizona, you're not supposed to let commissions interfere with the transaction. So back prior to this ruling, if for example, we had a dispute over a commission, maybe an agent changed the commission in the MLS amount from 3% to 2%, and we had a transaction going on, we were fighting over that commission, we're supposed to let that transaction close and then discuss the commission and not allow our argument over compensation enter into the mix at all. So my question, not as an attorney, but as an agent, is if I send that in and I get a counterback that says that you're not going to pay me, even though I have maybe a buyer broker agreement, is it really my place to interject and rock the boat? My buyers want to buy the house for $1 million. The seller wants to sell it for $1 million, but doesn't want to pay me. My buyers probably don't want to pay me. So do I really have a place to throw myself in the middle and try to get paid at the expense of the deal?
Okay. So this is the thing I contemplated. I told you I was thinking about this before we got on camera because we had discussed this earlier today. I contemplated that exact scenario from a lawyer standpoint. And I concluded, and you can go back and see the videos, I was saying in my how to buy directly from the real estate listing agent, I decided to come up with the concept of using my real estate license or the virtual license scenario so buyers could negotiate like a professional realtor would when buying houses for their family. They call up, they find out how much interest there was in the property, and then they decide whether they should ask for compensation, or in many cases in renovations and fixers, you donate your commission that you would receive as a professional to the listing agent because you want to get that house. Right. So in that scenario, I said I could be like, I really want my buyers to succeed. As a lawyer, I was just doing this from a lawyer because I didn't want to have to do AVIDs and show the property. I wanted to let the realtor do the realtor work, and I would just advise my clients. And I was like, well, we can help our clients negotiate, but I can't as a lawyer, I cannot let my fees stand in the way of my clients. And I can't even sue them over it. I just have to back out. So my scenario was I will start off either for $0 or a small fee and help all buyers buy directly from the listing agent. But if in their mind, in their scenario, they have to go work directly with the listing agent and not try to get their buyer agent or me paid, I had to let them go. I could not fight them. So I just let's just make that a feature. we will help you in the beginning. If it doesn't work, we will let you go and work with that listing agent directly. I don't, as you just said, and you arrived this on your own. As you just said, I don't see how buyer's agents can morally or ethically get in the way of their client getting the deal, right? I mean, what do you
Right.
think about that?
No, I totally agree. That was we were kind of talking about, that was the question I had for you. Like, I feel like that's the right answer is to really say nothing, let the deal proceed. And then it brings up the question, that we talked, do I have to work for free now? Because I do have an agency relationship with my buyers. Maybe I've worked with them for a few weeks or a month, or we've looked at other homes, etc. And now my commissions what clogged the deal. And now I'm accepting I'm not getting paid. Do I have any obligation to work?
Okay. I wanted, just so we can bring it, I feel like great question. I hope you remember because we're going to come back to it. I just want to go back and read the NAR settlement. For people who are saying, why is this such a big deal? What's changed?
Okay,
I will tell you what's changed. In the NAR settlement that they're agreeing to, and the DOJ has been pushing, so I have a very strong suspicion the only thing that can negotiate is maybe there's a difference in the amount as NAR paying. But I think this deal will settle unless, for instance, this video makes NAR see the light, that NAR is going to settle. And one of the terms of that settlement is that NAR has agreed that they will no longer allow, first of all, they're going to make a rule saying you can no longer allow compensation to be advertised to buyer's agents. So in other words, effectively, when a listing agent goes on the MLS and they talk about, and there's a field there, how much money are you going to offer to buyer's agents? I think right now the NAR rule, if this gets accepted, is you'd have to write in zero. And NAR said later they expect all this to be set up by mid-July. So essentially, they're saying that they're agreeing that realtors have to put zero compensation to buyers,
or that field may not even be there. I think.
Yeah, and I think by mid-July that field should be gone. But but their offer, if this gets settled, if the judge approves it, I think that day for sure zero has to go in the MLS. And the lawyer in me would say right now zero. Any realtor that wants their client's deal to not be subject to a lawyer unwinding it later should be putting zero in the MLS right now, because otherwise, arguably, putting 3% in there or $10,000 on the MLS is unethical, because the DOJ was pushing it. They called it steering, and NAR's agreed to do it. I don't see ethically how any realtor could be advising their clients without talking to a lawyer to put anything but zero in the MLS field. Do you have a different take on that, or would you agree?
No, I agree.
So for the purpose of the rest of our discussion today, we're going to consider zero as the way to go in the MLS field until mid-July or until the settlement gets undone because of the ethical issues. And we know DOJ was calling it steering. Which brings up another point I think you brought up with me before it even was official. What about flat fee versus percentage offers to buyer's agents even after zero is in the MLS field? So a buyer agent comes along and asks for 2% instead of a flat fee. What do you see? What? Because I think you were.
This goes back to the base. I think of where DOJ comes from is that, like, I mean, so where you're going with this is like, if I'm getting paid a commission, they would argue that it's in my interest to see the price go up. Right, I'll earn more.
Be compromised in that area. You would have incentives.
Right. I could be compromised by the fact that a price is going up, and I've experienced this personally with an agent where I wanted the price to come down because here in California our taxes are extremely high, and we were getting a large credit on a purchase. And
as a personal buyer, as
a personal buyer, right? I wanted to see the price come down. The agent kind of pushed back, and he had a reason with the seller, and I wasn't going to argue about it. It wasn't that big of a deal, but I think that puts some people in. It could put you in a compromised position where you benefit by going one way, the client could benefit by going another way. So that's where they come back and they mention that in their opinion letter, whatever
yes.
So a flat fee is a flat fee. That's the model that we're moving towards. We're flatfeeadvantage.com. We're going to be launching. Flat fee is just it's what I get paid to do my job, period. I don't have an incentive. I don't have a disincentive. My incentive is just there's no conflict for me. I want to get you as a buyer, I want to get you the best deal possible if I'm working with you as a buyer, and there's no change in my pay. And I think that's the better model.
And just so, because we were talking, your point was 100% accurate, but so for consumers who might not understand what you're talking about, can you try to work this out between, let's say you wanted to buy, and I know it wasn't this far apart, but you wanted to pay $1 million for the home, but you got $100,000 credit, or put the numbers in light, maybe using the real examples, just so they can know.
It was a purchase for I'm trying to think. Anyways, I'll give you it. So let's say it was $850, and they were offering me a large credit in lieu of repairs of $50,000.
Okay.
And I wanted
let's do $1 million versus 900 because the numbers work out.
Okay, it's easier. So I wanted them to reduce the price to 900, so that in California, your taxes are calculated off your purchase price. It would lower my taxes as a buyer moving forward. The agent gave me reasoning why they just wanted this be easier to just do it the way we did it and do a credit of $100,000. Which is fine. It's the same net, but it had a disadvantage to me as the buyer, and it had an advantage to the agent who in that deal was getting an additional commission. So,
and on a 3% list, it literally his
that's
commission
$3,000.
Would have been $3,000. Right. He could have made $3,000 more, and yet the net was the exact same price. So it was $3,000 more in his pocket. So that was the listing. Was that the listing agent you were dealing with?
That was the listing agent directly. I was working as an unrepresented buyer. So he was getting both sides of that transaction.
And you could see when NAR made their little snarky comment at the end of that paragraph, where they're saying, and I'm sure many buyers would appreciate that their buyer agent is not incentivized to have them pay more.
Right.
$3,000 is nothing to sneeze at.
Right.
Now that $100,000 swing is bigger than normal, but it could be $1,000 difference in the agent's pocket.
Right. It could be the fact of the matter is could be any amount, and it might not be intentional. It might not be even noticed by the agent or by the seller, but it could be perceived by the buyer. It could be perceived by both as something conflict.
Yeah, and this is why the DOJ would say this causes a conflict.
Right.
And it goes to why, because we've already gamed out many of these different scenarios. I don't see how agents can feel comfortable negotiating with other agents about the fees the agents are receiving in any of these scenarios. Time after time, I've seen, that would cause, like, the DOJ is really on these conflicts and steering. And I don't see how agents could be all that comfortable negotiating the risk of their sellers unless there's a buyer lawyer explaining things to buyers now, because otherwise it could still turn into a field day for class action suits. Because the one thing that I know about class action lawyers and litigation attorneys in general, plaintiffs lawyers in general, because I am an attorney, is that when they smell the blood in the water, they will go after a model that works over and over and over again. And right now, real estate agents are super vulnerable because the public, it's so obvious when a jury rang up National Association of Realtors for $1.8 billion. It's so obviously part of that is because everybody believes agents are overpaid, and many people hate the real estate agents. And I'll tell you, I'm going on a sidetrack, but yesterday I was watching a video at the end of the day, and it was a guy who held himself, was it Gilbert? Guy who holds himself out as a real estate agent coach. And he could be, for all I know. I just never saw him before. And in the comments, someone made a comment that said it was $24,000 on a $400,000 sale is insane. And I was like, yeah, I kind of agree with that comment. And there were real estate agents commenting that it's not a lot of money. They're insane. And there was a follow-up. And then one of the two agents, there were two agents taking the side of it was insane, sort of. And one of them said, well, then sell it yourself then. And it was like a really insulting remark. And I think this is part of the problem that real estate agents, why they're losing their lawsuits and why they will continue and why lawyers understand it is because they're tone deaf to the concept that 6%, it could be a massive amount of someone's equity in their home, because not many
Right.
people bought their homes for zero. So maybe they
I
got
think that's compounded by the massive inflation of home prices over the last several years too. There's a lot of newer agents that really don't. The money has moved so fast that they take that. Like, to hear that comment, I'm smiling and laughing over it, because I became a real estate agent because I did sell my house by myself. So
right.
I didn't find the service to be worth it, 20 years ago. And I went out and decided to do for sale by owner. And I've helped plenty of people do for sale by owner. And, there is a point where we've gotten out of touch with reality, and agents will often defend it by the fact that the average agent only does 1 or 2 transactions a year, or 2 transactions a year, 2.5, 3, depends on your market. But that sounds like the agent's problem.
Right.
So if
Right.
I could sell widgets and only sell 2 a year, I'd have a pretty nice life.
Right. And even I think in these lawsuits, the big one, the $1.8 billion settlement, which might now settle, that's what this was all about. They talked about the fact that Keller Williams, which is why they were one of the defendants, would train their agents on how to defend the fees. And one of the ubiquitous fee training counters is that it's 24,000, yeah, or 6%, yeah, but I only get 1% of it, because some of the money goes to the franchise, some goes to the broker, and then I get paid. And then on the buyer side, same thing. Some goes to their franchise, some goes to their broker, some goes to the buyer's agent. So it's really not that much money for selling your house. And to the agent, it might not be. It's not actually in many scenarios if it's a newer agent working at a big brokerage. But the number out of the seller's pocket is still enormous.
Right.
If you ask me, I was like, yeah, I mean, how much equity, it could be like half their equity.
Right. Well, if you go back prior to the run up in prices, and really prior to even the one before that, there was a general rule when I started in this business that you needed to own your home for around 5 years just to be able to sell it, to get out from that 6% commission.
Oh, I forgot about that. Correct. You're
Because
right.
homes didn't go up 10% a month, so it's
right.
So the modern agent has a different level of expectations. And I do love, I read those comments too, and they're hilarious. Like, it's like, I'll take my ball and go home. Good luck.
Yes, many agents. It's embarrassing. It's no wonder agents are hated.
Yeah.
But that's not to say, like, I know, I just, to be fair to the agents, you and I working together during the short sale period, we had agents willing to help people buy homes for $1,000 to avoid going into short sale. So that they could just, all they had was $1,000 equity, and agents were willing to help out in those scenarios. So there are agents that are very good and more concerned about buyers and sellers than they are themselves.
Definitely. And in any transaction, I think there's a huge amount of agents that will take. First of all, most of the agents who do more volume, they didn't charge the full 6%. They're usually the agents who take less, and they're agents who are willing to contribute commission. But I definitely have run into a lot of agents in my career that wouldn't give $1 towards a transaction to help somebody out. So they're both out there, but it hasn't been a perfect model, and I don't know that they have the perfect solution here, but it's going to be fun to see how this shakes out. So
and because we may open the loop in marketing terms about the massive risk to the buyer side, let's talk about that now.
Okay, yeah, I was just going to say, let's get back to like in this new model that they're talking about settling. Where do you see this buyer compensation, no compensation? Where do you see this going? First, let's talk about like what the options are. So first of all, NAR, National Association of Realtors, they're pushing that every buyer, they're going to change their rules to a buyer broker agreement, where the buyer's agent is going to have you as a buyer sign an employment agreement essentially with them, where they stipulate what they charge, how much they charge, and how they'll be paid. And that could be, it does on the form, and every state's a little different, but it leaves open options for them to be paid directly by the buyer. They can try to get it from the seller. So where do you see that going as far as options? First is that they do that buyer broker agreement, and that the buyer pays directly, which I think in fantasy land is what DOJ wants to see. But I don't know.
So explain that scenario. 10,000, 20.
Okay. So yeah, so if I say I'm going to help, John and Susie, these new first time home buyers, and my fee, maybe I'm going to use a flat fee because I prefer it. I'm going to charge $5,000 to work with you, and you'll need to pay me that up front. That would be in writing. What's that? Well, that's the question, right? Like, am I a trusting individual? Absolutely. But do I want to do a month's worth of work and not get paid?
From the buyer agent standpoint, since you're not likely to get those 3%ers anymore, you've got to consider what your time's worth. And you're saying, for me to get started, I might want
a retainer up front, a partial payment up front with the remainder due. Maybe we can try to get it from the seller. We can ask, which will lead us into some more conversations. So that's an option, is some type of a retainer. But I do think it's realistic that agents are going to want to get paid something to get started.
Even if, and what about the scenario where, let's say we go into a hot market and there's multiple offers and buyers don't always get the home? What happens in that scenario with the upfront payment?
Right, and that's the other one is not even a hot market, John. I've worked with buyers that have bought. We've put in offers, we've been accepted, we've gone through inspections, and the buyer's canceled, and then we do it again, and the buyer cancels. Like, where does the line of compensation when it was a large commission being paid by the seller? Buyers are willing to keep doing that work. It doesn't happen on every deal, but if we have an employment agreement where you're going to pay me, what does that agreement say when I perform all of my duties and we get a house and then you back out? Do I still get paid? Do I not get paid?
And what will the buyer agree to? Like, what would you advise? The lawyer, I have no problem giving the advice ahead of time. As a realtor, let me just, instead of you giving advice, I don't even know that I want to give it for nationally. But as a buyer, what would you think of paying a realtor $5,000 up front?
I wouldn't do it.
Yeah, neither would I. So that's almost a no-starter
for
people in arm's length transaction.
And I think with what you talked about a minute ago, with the perception, probably deservedly so for agents. And another video we can do sometime. I think the biggest reason for that is the low barrier to entry into this field. There are a lot of agents, they take a 2-week course, they get their license, they don't really treat it like a full-time career, and they wing the whole transaction. So I think there's going to be a lot of people that read this information as buyers, and they use Zillow anyways, they find the homes themselves, and they're not going to be willing to pay much, if anything. And the problem with that scenario is that there are a lot of things that you need some help with. If you've never done this before, from inspections, just straight negotiations, just understanding the contract, understanding, can they get their earnest money back? When are the dates? When are the deadlines? There's a lot that you don't really want to be unrepresented, but at the same time,
and even small things that add up, like homeowner association fees. Who's paying those? Or the buyer. There's all those little choices in a contract.
Right. And things to research, and to know to look for it. Now, as an agent, you don't do the research for a client, but you certainly point them in the right direction and help them make sure they don't overlook something that could come back to bite them, In addition to, as you mentioned earlier, in California, as a buyer's agent and as a seller's agent, you walk the property, you look for red flags, and we do know a little bit more what to look for. An average buyer may not know that. They may see something, maybe a different color paint in the ceiling. They don't know that could be a moisture stain that got covered up, and
exactly
a lot of issues.
You already know what the inspectors are going to say. Frequently, you're running the problem. Oh, look, the property's graded into the house, because that's what water does over time.
Right.
Your inspector is going to say the property should be graded away from the house, right?
Right.
You know that on every transaction.
Everyone, the dishwasher high loop is not going to be there. So.
But one thing I learned as a pool owner now, but before I wasn't a pool owner, is that if I walk in and I see like the coping pulling away, or I see old pool, I already know the pool pump's going to be an issue unless it's been replaced. So I'm going to tell my people, if they like the home, we've got to either bring in like a pool contractor who really understands these things to give them an estimate, or at least an inspector that really knows about pools. because I'm already seeing, oh, that's $5,000 to $10,000 right there, you know. And
Right.
a lot, I don't consider myself a pool expert. I will tell my buyers that, you know, they've got to be ready that pool's going to cost some money in the future. You know, I mean,
Right.
so that's in each area, golf course, homes. Like, what side of the fairway do you want to be if you don't like waking up at 6 a.m., you know, or you don't like golf balls in your backyard? Like, there's things that people who know area or erosion on waterfront homes. I mean, there's things that are useful to people.
Right. Right.
Okay, so anyway, one was pay flat fee ahead of time. Only supply demand, like that's going to have to be a really in demand super agent to get paid. Almost like this agent's so good on these types of properties, and there's a line. This agent gets to charge money up front if that's going to be a consistent business practice. But I imagine there will be some agents like that.
Right.
Now, what about the hybrid model?
I think that's probably the most likely where you take some type of a retainer, you know, something for your time. And that's part of, you know, I don't know what that number is. I don't know what that looks like. I also think in general, what DOJ wants to see, they've said it multiple times, what the class action, we're going to see prices come down, you know, so these fees that we talk about are going to get lower over time. But I still think there's another risk factor that with the hybrid model, there's the second part that maybe we ask the seller for, or maybe the buyer's supposed to pay at closing, like a traditional model has been set up. I still think there's a high risk in this situation as we uncouple the commissions from the current structure, where the buyer's agent could be at risk of not getting paid at all. That the buyer could come to the closing table and say, I don't know what you did, you know, and they talk about explaining your value. That's what NAR is pushing, explain your value. I think you can do that. I think you can give good value, but the other system really never had a place for the buyer to push back. I think I see buyers come to the table at closing, especially your first-time home buyers that are struggling, and they didn't know that it was going to be this fee or that fee from the title company, and they don't have the money, and oftentimes will contribute a commission to help cover some of those closing costs they were on. So to think at the end of this all, they're going to come with an additional amount to pay a realtor, I think a lot of times that money's not going to be there. Even if they
buyer's agents did come with some money. Frequently, as you pointed out before, buyer's agents sometimes sacrifice some of their fee to get deals closed.
Right, absolutely.
Now, the hybrid thing I was thinking about was that, and I'm not even sure how well this is going to work, but an agent might say $300 retainer, $30 an hour to drive you around, evergreen, all the issues lawyers have with retainer fees are going to be an issue for agents, except they're not equipped as lawyers are to write the contracts, to do these things, all the other things that lawyers have. That lawyers sometimes have conflicts too, but the lawyers are always like, we know we can't really sue our clients because every lawyer who's ever been to an education thing has been told by another lawyer or judge is you don't want to go to court with your clients because instead of just getting your money, you're going to get countersued and you're going to lose money. So every lawyer knows that they're not ever going to be collecting what's written on this paper because they're, malpractice, the whole thing. Everyone warns lawyers. You go to court, you're going to get countersued by the other plaintiff's lawyer, by the defendant's lawyer, and you're going to lose. I mean, that's what lawyers are told. Whether it's true or not, I don't know, but that's the fear put in every lawyer. You do not sue your clients. You do not negotiate against your clients. You do not favor yourself in conflicts of interest.
Right.
Now, are there some crooked lawyers out there? Yeah, but the vast majority do not do these things very often because they get this part. Anyway, coming back to here. So this like $30 an hour or a hybrid fee, it's possible. And some buyers with money may see the benefit and that may happen. Now, what I wonder is $2,000 up front to cover my fees, but I'll still get 2% at closing. What happens when the seller pushes back on that? Because I think as you brought up earlier, if I'm a lawyer right now while this model's evolving, I'm going to say to my seller, I don't know that if you accept the offer, but counter out the percent to $2,000 or, let's just use the money. You like the offer, you'd accept it. but instead of paying the buyer's agent $10,000, you offer $2,000. And you go back with that counter. I'm like, I don't know that buyer's agent can ethically torpedo your deal. So essentially, you've given an offer that's met the buyer's demand. And if that buyer really wants your home, they're going to close. There's a risk that buyer loves their agent and walks away and doesn't like that. Or they found a second house online yesterday and they wanted out anyway. And they were worried that they were hoping you'd counter so they could cancel the deal. But that risk is pretty low compared to saving $8,000.
Right. Right. And if
Did I
it's
explain that well enough, or do you want to rewrite that so that hits home? Because we were discussing this. I think that's a massively important point.
Yeah, I really think that it's so as an agent working with sellers, I think it's highly, highly probable, given these lawsuits, the attention they've gotten, you're going to be explaining in the listing that we can't offer compensation to a buyer's agent. It's highly likely that when a seller gets an offer, a commission is going to be one more demand, just like, by the way, we want your fridge or we want your washer and dryer. I think it's very probable, probably extremely likely that sellers are going to say, let's line item this one. I'm not going to pay the commission. I read that the buyer's agent.
That's another twist on that point. We're going to have to do a short on that.
Right.
That is so good. That's got to get out in the marketplace. That buyer commissions are going to be similar to a request for the range, the stove, the refrigerator, or the barbecue in the backyard.
Right.
That's crazy. But I think you're right.
Right. Because it's just one more expense to the seller that they don't know why they're paying. Right. I mean, part of the lawsuit, part of the letter from DOJ, part of the whole lawsuit is this notion that the seller should in some way pay a buyer's agent to help negotiate their price lower.
Wow. Okay, so I have so much more to cover in the list we made ahead of time, and we'll try to summarize it at the end. But because of what you just brought up, I think we need to hit a couple points fast. If I can, my mind just exploded with so many trees, branches we could just go off on. The scenario would be counter, deal gets done. Okay, so therefore, if buyer's agents' compensation drops as much as it probably will in the beginning, our house is going to sell.
In the beginning, I think it's going to be very market dependent. Like if the market was like it was the last 10 years in California, then yes. If we have a low inventory remains and high demand, even with these interest rates, we still have pretty high demand here in San Diego. Then homes will sell. I think people will find homes on Zillow. I think it's going to take some time though to work out. Like you don't call the agent.
Zillow.com, agents' websites,
right.
They're still out there, right?
Right. So they're going to find the property. Some will know immediately that they can reach out directly to the listing agent. Others won't. They're going to call a buyer's agent that's going to try to sell them their services. It's going to slow down the process. Aside from inflation of fees or as they call it, the price fixing with the current system is an efficient market. It brings them together, the buyer and the seller, via agents. Now, will there be some delay? Will that cause less demand? Quite possibly. So it's hard to say, but in a down market, in my experience, when things finally slow down, and we've been in an up market for quite a long time, but when we have that down market, that's when sellers are having conversations saying, when the price of your home is dropping and you're watching it drop 25, 30,000 a month, you start to say, what else can we do? And one of the things people used to do is offer even more money to get a buyer's agent to show their house, and so that situation flips around, but the seller can't offer that compensation directly. So I'm not sure how they'll work, or if they can work around that, how they'll advertise that they're willing to pay more or that they'll compensate. They'll certainly be more agreeable if their home hasn't sold in 90 plus days, which we're starting to see in some parts of the country. So it will be an interesting dynamic to see. How, I guess the real question is, how efficient will the buyers be without agents? And then with so this brings up a whole nother ball of wax here, but in the scenario that a home is listed for sale and buyers are interested but they don't have an agent, so there's a lot of times we'll make a call directly to the listing agent to kind of feel out where they're at. Do they have offers? And that agent will have my name and they'll know that I'm interested, and they can kind of help create more interest that way. Whereas a buyer sitting at home may have no idea that there's other people interested. They may take longer time. They may miss out more. But on the flip side, the seller also may not know that these other people are out there, because there's not going to be this communication. The seller.
So there may be less offers, there may be fewer offers, there may be fewer multiple offer scenarios,
Right.
because incentives have buyer. There's been a lot of buyers agents who follow up with the buyers that have shown interest on their website over and over and over.
Right.
Because other realtors pay for the leads, and they're paying their people on the team make these calls. Or agents are hungry to get paid, so they're constantly calling people and say, "Hey, I see this house that met your criteria. Do you want to go see it now?" And there's going to be some of that component missing. And
Right.
I know, in my belief as also an econ major before becoming a lawyer and a real estate broker, I believe in offers. And we've seen in San Diego, like if you have 10 real buyers showing up for a house, whether you spread it out over showings for a week or two or a big open house weekend, which I prefer if you can do the marketing for it. If there's 10 real buyers there, you're going to get an offer, right? I mean,
Right.
But the key was getting the 10 real buyers. So I very much believed that showings on a home that presents well would be as important as maybe pricing it low. Because really, when you price it low, what it does is it brings out more value buyers, but it's still about showings. Like it was hard for me in the sale of homes to pull out that showing component. Like houses get seen by significant amount of buyers, offers came out. Now, was that because that's human nature, or was that so many of those buyers were represented by buyers agents who were incentivized to talk to them, show the home, draft the contracts, get their name on the contract, and get it submitted to the offer?
Right.
I don't know, and I think that's what we're about to find out.
I think we're going to find out. I mean, that's
I have a feeling a lot of multiple offer scenarios were happening because of buyer agents.
Well, and in that multiple offer scenario, definitely because of the agents. But what about this scenario, right? I got into the business part of this. Like, so I'm a buyer. I'm interested in the house. I see it online. I call. Maybe it's underpriced. Maybe it's just a spectacular house and it shows great in the pictures. That listing agent, maybe they get 50 calls that day because the people don't have buyer's agents. They're calling. He doesn't get back to them all. He gets an offer. He shows it to his seller and says, "Here's an offer. Do you have any other offers?" "No, I don't," because they didn't just come in, because the buyers don't have an agent.
Wow. Nice insight.
So it's, that scenario could be, it could also create a little conflict there. Like, as a listing agent, I have an obligation to show my seller every offer I receive. But if I get a phone call, because that becomes the new medium, because they don't have an agent that just fires an offer in that's educated the buyer, I don't need to present my phone calls. So there's a lot of things that are going to get worked out that I think, we'll see where it goes.
Wow. Because I know when helping an estate sell homes, and so many agents, so many renovators and flippers would make an offer, people would buy it, they'd come out, do the inspection, and try to negotiate lower. And because the estate had a lawyer representing them, after selling a couple of homes, by the third home, they're like, just sell it to that agent, to that renovator who closed and didn't come back. And even though he offered $5,000 less or $3,500 less, he closed last time. Just sell it to him, and bypassed these other people all these other offers because they wasted 2 weeks, 4 weeks. And that woman complained to the Association of Real, no, to the business, the Department of Real Estate on Front Street in San Diego about me. They're like, he must have sold it to an insider because we offered $3,500 more and didn't close. And I got a call from the officer. The guy had credentials that were scary, and would have been really terrifying for me if I wasn't an attorney and knew how ridiculous this is. But he called me up and asked me about the transaction. And I said, well, I'm not sure I should tell you about the transaction because I'm also an attorney, but let me just tell you that the seller was a trustee for an estate that had multiple properties, that previously all this happened, and that their lawyer was charging them by the hour, spending more of the estate's time reviewing all these crappy offers that didn't follow through than just selling to this person who had already closed on the previous properties. And the guy said, well, all you had to do was say seller was advised by an attorney and I'm done. I was like, okay. But that's the scenario. You brought up that scenario. Right. 50 offers come in, but the listing agent only shows one. Like,
because they're not technically offers, right?
They're not in writing. They're not in writing.
Not in writing.
So what did you? Wow, I think we're gonna have to chop all this up into different sections because you've brought up some serious landmines. Very good thinking is all I can say. And then I came up with the technology answer for one of the scenarios you just brought out that I think is going to have to become standard practice in the industry. So many things are going to change if people actually think about it because of these changes. So anyway, I think that's where we need to wrap it up. That was a crazy good point. Sellers are going to have to be assured that their listing agent's not steering their favorite buyer to them. Like that's an issue.
The lawyer used the word steering.
Yes, that's an issue.
Right.
Wow. Okay. So I'm going to just quickly go through this. We had the hybrid. We had the lawyer to represent. And the lawyer in me is like, why do I think lawyers are going to be perfect in this scenario? Because lawyers who have experience in real estate, not the lawyers who blow up deals because realtors do things in a different manner, but lawyers who understand a fidelity to the deal, to the closing is what most buyers and sellers really want. So you shouldn't blow up the deal. You should just make it tighter, make it better. So lawyers can do many, many, many things. If you consider that buyers who know the areas and can find the houses themselves. I'm not talking about the buyers who are relocating from out of town and need the advice of an experienced person about where to buy, where the schools are, all the other things that buyers agents could do for relocation buyers and out-of-town buyers. Those people may still want to work with buyers agents. But the vast majority of work that most buyers agents were doing can be done by the internet with the properties for sale and open houses by listing agents and lawyers reviewing all the paperwork that comes in and explains to them and has an idea of what to do when their inspector says, oh, look at all these problems. Like you have to be comfortable looking at inspection reports and sort of deciphering them for your agent, for your buyer. Wouldn't you agree?
Yes.
I mean, I've seen buyers freak out when they see all the problems and you're like, oh.
Right. Well, and especially here in California, I mean, our disclosure packets are 200 pages plus pages.
Exactly. So a lawyer could do all that work for a buyer and contemplate what they're getting paid by the hour, but because they don't have to go to the property multiple times, because they don't have to do an AVID, which is the thing that I found to be the most troublesome in the whole package. And you pointed out other states don't have that. In California, I think the biggest fear that I had was the agent visual and inspection, because what is the standard I'm being held to? I am not a contractor, but I have some experience as a homeowner. What standard am I being held to as I walk through a property? Do I have to inspect every hairline fracture, every paint chip, every bow, every sliding glass door that's got a little arch, push, pressure? I mean, all these things on 30, 40-year-old homes that I see now because I'm the owner of a home. Am I responsible for deciding whether that's material? So AVIDs are a major pain in the ass to a thinking person. And since a lawyer doesn't have to do them, I think lawyers are going to take the place of buyer agents on a lot of these transactions. Now we just spoke about this. I'm glad because I had that highlighted. but you can summarize it. I had, how will this impact offer size and the amount of offers coming from buyers in your experience? And I think you just covered a lot of it, but do you want to summarize that in a sentence?
Yeah, I think initially the more comfortable that a buyer is, whether they're working with an attorney or an agent, the better the offer they put forward. I think the more that someone has been able to help answer their questions, their concerns, the more confident they are to put in a stronger offer. I think that's
Right.
true in any market. And
You want to eliminate their fears and objections. If you can meet them ahead of time and eliminate them, they're more likely to make full price offers.
Right.
Whereas almost every buyer's thinking, oh, this could be a problem, that could be a problem. I better hold my offer down so I can negotiate. They're pre-negotiating a lower offer because they're seeing the risks. And
Right,
if
right.
the seller can eliminate those risks, full price offers come out in theory and in practice.
And also, I think there's that time period when there's a multiple offer situation and a good experienced agent talks to the other agent and often gets a little bit of information, a little bit of guidance that helps guide their offer.
Like how you helped me buy my home.
Right. Exactly.
Yes, Phil has done this, folks. I was
Right.
in a multiple offer scenario. He called the agent who was representing the home that I live in now with my family. And he's like, you really want to sell this to John? And he gave all the reasons. And normally, like, a lawyer is a problem. Phil explained he's an experienced lawyer. He already knows all this stuff. He's actually your best kind of buyer because he's aware of all these things. So if you sell your house to him, he's going to close and you don't have to worry about all this shit
Right.
all this stuff. But what did you, that's essentially what you did, or you did it better than that?
Yeah, essentially what I did. I mean, I just really built up the confidence in your ability and situation and desire, and let them know you'll do what it takes to get this done, and we'll make it easy. You're in the industry, we'll make it easy on them. And
right.
But back to the point here, void of those types of phone calls, I think there's going to be uneducated person is not going to even know to compete with that type of an offer. And in your situation, we actually got a little guidance as to where we needed to be.
Yeah, $2,000 more.
Right.
I was worried about 20. I could have gone 20, but I went 2.
So I think without a doubt, initially, I think less offers, possibly lower prices.
Right. What about
underrepresented people?
Which brings up, we're not going to cover this today, but there's going to be a new model for listing agents with respect to dual agency too. Like, that's going to be crazy,
right?
Because there's going to be a lot more of it, I think.
Right.
Now, sellers, how will sellers react to these scenarios? Well, initially, I think there's going to be a strong counter to the buyer agent fees. They're going to be countering them out or down, but accepting offers. And that's going to put unreal pressure on buyer's agents, because as we open this up, are they allowed to stand in the way of deals?
Right.
Now, the other thing is, where do we see this going? And you're welcome to join in, but as I go through this over and over, I arrive at listing agent helping both parties get the transaction done with a buyer. I'm just going to call it for now, a real estate buyer's attorney on the other side, helping that buyer feel comfortable and being able to advise the buyer when they should push back on issues and when what they're looking at is in the buyer's interest. Like, if buyers are feeling protected in that manner, they're probably more likely to make strong offers, and it's probably going to be better for sellers and buyers in that model. And of course, a buyer's agent with experience could also fill a role of what I see as a buyer agent attorney, but they're going to have more problems because of that AVID, in my opinion. They're going to have to show up at the property more often. They're going to have to do more work for that same new lower amount of money. I think basically buyer agents are going to have to compete at the same fees as lawyers would be willing to do it. And I think that's where then the buyer will decide no representation or a buyer agent at the same price as an attorney.
Right. And I think the big component that that drives this, that the buyer's agents have lost over the years, is that you really don't. Most homeowners have found, even if it's as simple as the list of homes they want to see on their own. They're not relying on, you might set them up on emails. They might get emails from an agent, but that's not how they find their houses. They're using their phone. They're looking at Zillow. They're looking at Redfin, homes.com now. So that big component justifies a lower price. But then the question becomes, I think largely it depends how fast the race to the bottom is. And as a consumer, a guy that buys a lot of houses, if I go into a market where I don't know anything and I want to make a purchase and I'm faced with paying an agent a small fee, let's just make up a number here, $2,500, to give me advice, or I can pay an attorney $2,500 to give me advice on that state's local rules and contracts, I'm probably going to pick an attorney. And I think that's going to be a tougher sell for a buyer's agent to compete with, because, like, as you point out, the attorney is going to be sitting in their office reviewing the documents, doing a good job explaining this to you. You're going to feel a little more protected. But that agent, if you're using an agent, is going to do all of that to a degree, but they're also going to be driving you or meeting you at properties and showing you houses. I don't think they want to work for that small amount. And I don't know if I want the agent who wants to work for that small amount working for me. It can be a lot of time. So I think that the buyer's agent the prices get forced down the most. And I think that that's where we're going to see the biggest change, initially.
So we've been doing this for a long time. Do you want to talk about Zillow?
Right. I was about to say that. What I really see is these giant platforms, these publicly traded companies with a lot of cash coming in and taking over this model somehow. With rather, they might be licensed, they might be agents, but they're probably going to be more like chauffeurs to unlock houses, and maybe staff attorneys to answer questions. And somebody's going to come in at some point and do this at massive scale. And I don't think individual agents are going to be able to compete with that.
I am interested, because I already see the scenario that I'm thinking, but I don't think you and I are seeing the exact same one. So what does that mean to you? What are they going to do at scale to blow out regular real estate agents?
Perhaps they offer some type of a total comprehensive real estate services. I don't know how they're going to do it. If they're going to go after a fee for people to list their homes on their services, and then they're going to have their own buyers team that's built into that somehow, where it's hard. I don't know, John. I know some things they could do, but I don't know which way they'll go. What do you think?
So one thing, like I'm thinking in terms of Zillow's revenues, because they already said at the shareholder meeting, if these lawsuits turn out the way they've happened, and there's zero offer in the MLS, agent fees were going down, and they call them their partner providers or whatever. Their
Right.
partners will have less money to want to spend. So Zillow said that they would foresee their revenues going down. I was amazed that I read that, because it seemed true to me. But then after the first day of the Big Short, when this announcement was made, thing dropped. I don't know if it's a Big Short, but lots of sellers. The next day, the typical apologists came out, probably the ones who work for hedge funds with large positions, were coming out and saying, oh, but they've got eyeballs and they might turn out on top. And other people like Homes.com saying, well, our model is to service listing agents, so our model is still intact. I don't see it. I don't see if they totally reinvent. Like, I don't see what they've got now. Now, if they totally reinvent somehow, and for some reason, National Association of Realtors, like, to me, wow, I shouldn't even say this. I'm going to say it. I was worried the National Association of Realtors would go away, period. And that would leave the listing process in the hands not of the brokerages that own the MLS and kind of control NAR, but in the hands of a hedge fund. And that hedge fund would therefore be in control work with Zillow, maybe Redfin, and Realtor.com, and just say, oh, listings are 6%, but we'll provide services to lawyers. Luckily, lawyers can't agree to have their fees paid in that manner that I'm aware of. But I was like, realtors did do a job of protecting buyers, making them feel comfortable. And if you have all the eyeballs for the sellers, as you were saying, they would get to control the market. I don't see that happening for them unless Realtor.com goes away. But even then, I would have to lead the charge, or some lawyer, enterprising lawyer, would contact all the big brokerages and say, we can't leave this in the hands of hedge funds. You have to come up with a new scenario. We lay out the guidelines ahead of time. You have no influence over us, but this is what we guarantee will happen. Because in the end, the people who are doing the work are the listing realtors. They're taking the pictures. They're helping with the inputs. They're doing the marketing. They're helping buyers negotiate prices and sales and counter. Like I remember helping my in-laws buy a home on a waterway, and there was this old-time 84-year-old lawyer who could hardly move. But dude, when I made a lower offer, not low ball, but lower offer than they wanted, he goes, no. And he comes back full price. I think he knew my people wanted it. My in-laws wanted it. And I was like, that was the best negotiator I'd ever seen in anything in my entire life. And I've negotiated with some of the biggest lawyers on a record company deal. I was like, that was a freaking negotiator. He came back full price. No. I was like, wow. I go, how about $10,000? He's like, no, full price. And I always wonder what would happen if my people came in 20,000 under. Would he have split it with them? But he didn't like their offer. He said, we got a house that we want to sell here. He came back full price. So there's something realtors do. I don't even know. Well, I don't know where I went, but I was happy. I'm hoping NAR survives because that's an outlet for competition still, so that listing agents can go in and list their property. And how much listing agents get paid in the end is going to be very interesting to me. But I don't see the revenues. As long as Realtors.com is there, I don't see the revenues happening for Zillow and Homes.com. Well, I don't know. What do you think? I think I was about to say, unless Google.
Yeah, I think I was mischaracterizing. I said Zillow as I just meant some large platform.
Yeah,
Zillow's
no, I didn't think so.
model definitely.
I guess in the end, it's Google and where they're sending the traffic, right?
Right. Maybe it's Amazon. I'm not sure. Although they did file an antitrust against Apple, so we'll see. Maybe they're going to rein in some of these giant corporations.
Wow. All right. Well, we'll leave it there. I think we're going to have to divide this up into segments. That was, I think you had some profound insights there. All of this, of course, could change. We might not even see the model that develops. We might not even envision what's really going to happen.
Right.
And that's what I would tell sellers right now is like, this could rapidly change until we coalesce on how standard works. We don't really know, but for now, I'd say if you don't mind not selling your home, you might want to counter out that offer. That I might have totally different advice 1 month from now or 2 months from now. But for now, that's what I'm seeing. It's like, what are buyer agents going to do? Are they going to stay on the way of the deals? I don't think they can. I don't think they can.
And it's very fluid. I mean, that's you made some great points. Like, I would be very concerned if I was selling my house right now that I didn't offer compensation, because at this moment, until they change it, even though they've put out that settlement agreement, I don't know that you should. And so it's an interesting time to be selling.
Well, what do you think of my theory? 2 weeks of zero, and then you reconsider.
Right. Well, let's get into. So we'll close with the flat fee advantage. John and I are working on a program where we do offer no compensation. That we do sell the home for a flat fee. We're still kind of working through it. So I'll just put our offer out there. We're at the current time, we're going to do, if you have a home in San Diego County, even maybe Riverside, Orange County, we're looking for people that are willing to sell their home without paying any compensation to a buyer's agent.
With willing to offer zero on the MLS right now.
Right. We'll put an offer 0 on the MLS. We kind of have a 2-step approach where we want to try going 2 weeks with our own marketing systems and doing a large open house and seeing where we're at with your area. We'll obviously analyze this for each listing as we do it, because different areas are still pretty hot. Some have cooled down. We go that 2 week, and at that point, we kind of make a decision as to the discussion of if you're willing to pay a compensation, or if we see offers that ask for that compensation. We're looking for some trials. So we're willing to do this pretty much at cost at $3,000 to list a home.
That number is subject to change. The point is, we're not trying to make any money on it because we're going to spend. Right. Maybe our gas.
John and I aren't getting rich splitting $3,000 and paying for.
And we're not doing this because that's our model. It's because I really am concerned of my ethical duties to the seller.
Right.
And I don't know. Like, I know. So I sold my brother's home by putting $1 into the MLS, and a couple of times we did it. I know that in some markets that are hot, that there's a lot of buyers, a lot of interest. You don't have to offer buyer's agents. The sellers will find you. They'll call you. They'll ask what's up, and you'll say
the buyers will. Right.
The buyers will, and you'll get the home sold. But other people's properties require knowledgeable agents or motivated agents sometimes, and we don't know ahead of time what the market's going to be like. Like if you're trying to sell your home Easter weekend, or even Easter week, you probably, and you need to do it very short, you might want to be incentivizing buyer's agents because there's usually not a lot of traffic to open houses that weekend, right? Your marketing's not likely to work as well. So instead of us ahead of time having to like talk people into saying, try us for 2 or 3 weeks, but we're going to get full price, I want to admit to the sellers, we're not sure that offering 0 is in the MLS is going to work for your house. But if you want to try it, we're going to reward you with a super low fee. Like, we really would like you to try it. But after 2 weeks, if we haven't gotten a lot of showings, we don't get offers, whatever, you're welcome to say, let's go another direction. And we'll talk to you about not working with us, or maybe at that time we'll be more comfortable offering money to buyer's agents, which I'm not entirely comfortable doing right now. But we'll try it for 2 weeks and see what happens. Or what were you going to say?
Yeah, that we do the 2 weeks to see what we can do, and then we move forward. We really, we're not sure how this is going to play out, and that's why we're just doing a number to cover costs and to help build a data set of the best way to handle this. So, we're both very competent. We've sold a lot of houses, hundreds of houses here in Southern California, and we want sellers that want to sell their house, that want to get the highest net, that want to navigate this complicated issue, and we're willing to do it at a ridiculously low price just to get that experience and work through this. So
it's middle of March right now, or later weeks in March, and I'm looking at, I don't know, maybe we do it for 5 to 10 people or a couple months. I mean, It's really until that mid-July deadline occurs, until our MLS changes, or after we've got a data set of the first few homeowners. So if you're seeing this after July, there's a good chance that offer is not available anymore.
Right.
If you've seen it, and I don't know how many people are going to see the offer, but if we've already got 5 or 10 done, it's probably also not going to be in existence anymore. Agreed?
I agree completely. Yeah.
All right. So anyway, if you're interested in finding out more, where should they go, Phil? What should they do?
Flatfeeadvantage.com. We have a page holder up, or we're building the site right now. I think we have a homepage on there. You can get our numbers, reach out to us directly. You can always reach me at 480-862-6307. That's my direct number. Happy to talk to you. But check out the website, and we'd love to work with somebody that's serious about selling a home right now and get this done for you.
Right. All right. So
okay.
I know that was a long one.
Right.
Hopefully we'll be able to cut it up into some shorts too, but we'll end the recording and we'll get it posted, and I guess I'll call you in like 10 minutes or 5 minutes. I'll call you.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. Thanks, John. Talk to you soon. Bye.